All right, Michael, welcome to the GTM Pack podcast. I'm super excited that you're here.
Yeah, pumped. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I have to say, this topic is one that I'm extremely excited to dive into today. I think I'm not the only one that's trying to figure out pricing these days, right? I don't know if you know this, but we launched our latest product pretty recently, which is sort of an AI automated version of our main use case in our original AssetMule product. It's called Follow Up, and it's turning sales call transcripts into digital sales rooms, essentially personalized digital sales rooms. And pricing is probably one of the most challenging things that I'm facing as I look into this. There's the sort of usual seat-based pricing, which I think would be like the easy approach, but I think AI is totally changing the game. And like many founders out there, I'm nervous about making the wrong decision, having to deal with the consequences later. If this is a successful product and more people use it and they use it heavily, right? So I really want to dig deep into this topic today and get your insights. I know you have a really unique vantage point. But before we dive in, for those that aren't familiar with you, maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are, your company, and how you came to found Atlas.
Yeah, no, well, thank you again for having me, and always fun to hang out. I know this has been a long time coming, and this is this is my own personal long time listening, first time calling moment for for the GTM pack. So excited. Atlas inherently is billing infrastructure built for AI native, AI enabled SaaS companies. And our claim to fame, or our differentiator, is that we have an AI pricing and packaging agent built into that billing infrastructure to help companies navigate exactly what you just lined out. Right? We just launched an agent, or we just launched a brand new AI product, and we have no idea how to price and package it. Right? And transparently, nobody does, man. If I sat here and told you, oh, I know exactly how to price your product, I'd be lying to you, right? There's very little historical data to go off of when it comes to pricing AI. This is brand new innovation, and unlike the internet or mobile phones, where we had sometimes decades to adopt that technology and learn how to monetize it. AI is permeating our everyday lives and changing things overnight. So we don't have a lot of time to figure this out. And so Atlas was built on that premise of you need as much intelligence as you can get, and you need the flexibility to test as you're trying to navigate the waters of this brand new AI world. And that all came from my co-founder and I and our experience at Pendo, which if you're not familiar with Pendo is a product cloud product sold into product teams of SaaS and AI businesses, mainly driving value through product analytics and in-application guidance and different ways to engage your users and understand how people adopt and use your product. And transparently, we had what we thought was a usage-based model, a consumption-based model. But it was kind of in name only, a consumption-based model in name only. And it caused a lot of issues with customers when we wanted to change it to something more modern, like a true consumption model, or something a bit more flexible where we could monetize on different value driven in the product for different customers. It always came with a 6 to 9 month engineering bill. And it always took us a very long time to get to the point where we were, pretty confident about what we wanted to change the business model to. And so we had, we spent a lot of money, we ran in a lot of circles, and at the end of the day, we continued to deploy a business model that worked for some, but not for all. And so Clay and I left Pendo to build a product that would do that. Transparently, we got really lucky that the GenAI boom happened the same, almost the same month we left Pendo to build this. And so, with startups, it's mostly about timing, and knock on wood, we feel this is a really good time for flexible billing infrastructure with a ton of intelligence on what's working and what's not inside of your business model.
Totally. I was going to actually say that your timing was impeccable. because I remember when you guys launched, and pricing has always been a challenge. I think you were from the beginning, you were already solving a problem that people had. But I think the emergence of Gen AI and now agents has just taken it to a whole new level where the game is completely different,
Yeah.
and people are really lost, right, in trying to
Yeah.
figure out what model makes most sense for them.
Yeah.
Um, for those that maybe aren't as familiar with how things are changing, maybe you can unpack a little bit what makes Gen AI products and agent products so different from SaaS, that pricing in the old world, let's say seat-based pricing, right, as maybe the standard,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense anymore, isn't viable anymore.
Yeah. I love this because we are actually working on telling this story ourselves, right? You as a product marketer, man, maybe we can hang out a little after this and you can round the edges on it, right? But when you think about the SaaS model and why the SaaS model worked, we have to kind of go back to why did we build software and for what purpose? And, honestly, up until just recently, we built software to enable humans to complete a job to be done. Right. And software's value was, typically measured on the value of efficiency, what the level of efficiency that was obtained by that specific human or set of humans by using that software. And therefore, we were able to price software on seats, right? The amount of humans we're able to enable with this software, that ends up being a pretty clear line to cost to value, right? Man, that is totally different with AI, right? AI now removes the human, or most of the human, from that process, right? So instead of selling software that enables humans to complete a process, we are now selling software that actually just completes the process itself, right? And therefore, if we as AI companies roll out seat-based pricing, our product will cannibalize our business model. We're actually building to allow smaller teams, smaller organizations to accomplish more with less human headcount. And therefore, the seat-based model doesn't work. It doesn't give us the ability as AI companies to scale with the amount of value that we're driving. Now, that kind of opens the conversation up to, well, what does work? But this is one of the main reasons why the SaaS model doesn't. The other reason is, more than ever, delivering software comes at a variable cost, right? And that is very different than what we've dealt with in the past, right? Variable cost in the past has been, cloud-based compute, and the margins were, or the range in our spend. Our spend as an organization might be huge, but per customer was very small, and so because of that, our margins were very predictable, right? If we roll out a seat-based model or an access-based model for an AI product, meaning hey, pay me $50,000 a year, no matter how much you use it, our margins are then variable, hard to predict, because someone might use that AI product extensively versus, the next customer that doesn't. The variable cost of pinging a model multiple times is more present than any other, cost in delivering software, or than there was in delivering software before. So you have two huge shifts happening, where one, the value you're driving is different, and therefore how we monetize it must be different, and the cost to deliver is now variable, and that has to play a role in how we think about our pricing as well.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I'm curious. So if seat based now doesn't work, right, for this new world, what are some of the most, I guess, interesting, most impactful models that you've seen so far being used in this sort of AI world?
I'm a big believer that eventually we'll all get to outcome-based pricing.
Mhm.
I love that, right? And that's our ideal world, right? Holy cow, I think we're a very long way off from that, though, for so many reasons. But look, it's what I think what's what everybody's working towards. And if you're
Yeah.
building AI products, like that should be the goal in mind. How do I own an end-to-end workflow where I can really claim the attribution of a specific outcome, right? But until we get there, hybrid models, and you'll hear like a ton of people in the space talk about this. Kyle Poirier talks about this. Metronome talks about this. Manny at Paid talks about this, and it's actually really great to see that kind of we're all singing from the same hymnal here, where it's like hybrid pricing models are king, and the reason being, one, like we still have to meet our customers and our users, our customers and our buyers where they are. And for the last 25 years, they've been buying on a subscription model, right? And that's where people are comfortable, right? But at the same time, we have to begin to educate them on what a variable cost model looks like as our businesses are changing. And so that's where I think the nuances come in. That's where I think you'll see like a lot of thought leaders in the space start to deviate. Everyone says hybrid. And then after that, I think everyone's perspective is a little bit different. Ours is who you sell to really matters. Who uses your product truly matters in deciding from a hybrid based model, where do you go, right? What do you use inside of your product as the billable metric or the variable cost feature, right? Is it even a consumption or an outcome or some sort of activity or something besides that you're monetizing? What is that more stable part of the business model? Is it just a flat fee for access? Is it seat-based, right? I think this all really just depends on the business and the customer and what that dynamic is like. And so we encourage a lot of discovery there. As I think it's really hard to say, well, it's going to be one blanket model for everybody.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think like the thing that I've struggled with in my own journey trying to figure out AI pricing is my background, started as a salesperson, then went into product marketing. So the salesperson in me has experienced the buyer wanting a very clear, sustainable price point, right? Where it's like, especially if you're selling enterprise deals and it's an annual base, they budget for it. And if you say 50K a year, they can look at their budget and say, okay, we have 50K for this, right. So we can buy this thing, right? So that's one part where I've struggled thinking about our own model. How do we address that certainty of this is how much it's going to cost, right? And then on the other side of the coin, it's the product marketer in me who wants to be able to articulate our pricing in a very simple way, right? Yeah. And when I hear about like credits, again, I know you're mentioning a hybrid model, which maybe solves some of these issues, right? Maybe not all of them, but it gives it a kind of like solve some of them, and then new things on the other side of the hybrid coin, right? But when you think about credits and things like that, the thing that I struggle with is like clarity. Like if there's all these different like variables and things like that, how do people like really understand what the pricing model means? Right. And we know in this buying world, right, like for any friction can cause a deal to slow down or be lost, right? So that's where I've struggled a little bit.
I think that perspective is awesome. In fact, I would say that like just in the last 2 minutes of you talking, there's nothing there I disagree with. You and I like are very aligned there. And as someone who's actually very proud to release like credit-based functionality inside of our product over the next few weeks, I'll tell you that that's like one of the quickest ways to make your pricing and packaging not simple. Right? I mean, there's a lot of how on a lot of pricing pages, ours included to a certain extent, you have a call sales button.
Yeah.
and like, that can be so frustrating because there's not a lot of transparency there. Credits is like a new modern way of not being super transparent with like what value you're going to get for the cost that you're providing, right? Or the cost that you're paying. But I do think like credits play a role in the funnel, right? So I'll kind of start here and then move backward with your thoughts, because I have some others too. I actually think a credit-based model is excellent when you are trying to get people into the product to experience value for the first time and graduate them incrementally into larger paid deals.
Mhm.
Credits allow people to credit card swipe every time they see or need more value. When we are buying as like prosumers or even as like, small teams, the value of a credit, I think, is a little less important because like mostly we're using credits on a trial basis. Right. And so I think it's a great way for AI companies to create paid self-service or product-led motions that then allow customers to grow, stair step into places where maybe they're paying $300, $400 a month, and now we want to introduce a sales assisted or sales led motion that gets to what you just mentioned, where it's like, hey, now we're going to have a bit more of like a legacy type enterprise contract, right? And this is actually something we've spent a ton of time thinking about in our product, because I'm a big believer that AI companies will run all three motions in the future, right? You will have a self-service way that people can get in and just POC what the agent or what the product does. There will be a way for people to then say, okay, based on who I am or what my needs are, I want to try this out. And I think free trials, for all intents and purposes, are relatively a thing of the past, or extensive free trials at least. And then as salespeople, we're going to be not mostly, but we're going to partially be working in an account management perspective of taking customers that have seen and paid for value, whether that's through a credit-based or a paid trial system, and pulling them up into more enterprise-like contracts. So all three of these motions, I believe, exist and have great purpose in AI companies. The first concern you shared, though, is something that we've thought about deeply. Like, I have competing perspectives here. So this is Jekyll and Hyde. You and I are both enterprise sales reps at heart, and so there's like one rule, and that's just like, don't complicate it, get the deal done, right? Be really simple. Go in, like, figure out what allows the deal to get done, land and expand, or like figure out what the easiest way is to go and get as much of the opportunity as possible, and let's go get the deal done. When you introduce, usage and consumption and some of these variable metrics, like, there's no doubt about it, that complicates things, right? And we both know from a buyer perspective, predictability is, a top 3 priority when doing, deals are multiple millions of dollars, right? Now, like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We all pay AWS or Azure or what, on a consumption basis. So like, there's really good example of how in the enterprise or on, bigger scale contracts on a more annual basis, consumption works, right? Some of this is going to be education of the buyer, but other parts of this are going to be is actually going to open up more creativity for us as salespeople. How do we inject minimums and maximums? How do we build predictability into the contracts for the customer, right? How do we help outline what usage tiers look like and why it's going to be advantageous for them to overuse the amounts that they've been contracted for, right? How do economies of scale apply to these? This is we as salespeople, we always love having multiple levers, more levers that we can pull. So on the flip side of complication, like, I also see like, ooh, we now have more levers to pull, right? inside of our deal cycles. But I think to round that out, like, to your point, goodness gracious, like, the most important thing here is finding that balance so that simplicity always wins, right? I think there are a number of companies right now that are, trying to do credit-based systems, usage-based systems, annual and long-term paying contracts, and they're not yet nailing the simplicity of it. And so like, I still think that's an area where we all need to grow.
Is there any company out there that you've seen that has done like a really good job of this? Like, maybe not like nailed it yet, but like is doing a good job when it comes to pricing, where it's still simple enough, it makes sense for that particular buyer, it's
Yeah.
economically viable for
Yeah,
their business?
yeah, I mean, I'll go back now. This is maybe a cop out because I just said it, and it's not necessarily like SaaS. It's infrastructure, but like, our cloud compute systems do a great job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things that they do that help in this realm is like, one, they've got customer portals where you can log in and track your usage. You can actually see and forecast based on what you're doing, like what that cost is going to be. You can turn dials and knobs at any moment. Credits and usages roll over and apply to the next year when unused. That was a big challenge that we had at Pendo with our kind of like consumption and name only model is you come in and you'd buy X amount of monthly active end users, right? But if you only use 25,000 of your 50,000, doesn't matter. You pay for the 50,000 anyway,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things don't roll over. So there's like little tiny things that I think can continue to happen to help, not just predictability, but like how approachable these deals can be at a much larger scale. And I think if we look at the snowflakes of the world, there's probably a lot we can learn from like how they're not just structuring these deals, but then running their businesses based on a consumption or hybrid plus consumption model.
Makes sense. If somebody is listening to this and they have a AI product, they're about to launch it, and they've gotten to that point where now it's time to start thinking about pricing, where would you recommend they start? Like, what's the first thing they should do to start getting a sense of where they go with their pricing?
3 places. First and foremost, their customers. Like there is still, and there shouldn't be, a great replacement for talking to your customers. Whether that's about pricing and packaging or your product or what, talk to your customers. A lot of people will be like, oh, come on. But like that's it. The second is like, do some internal math, right? That, we as salespeople, we're like, okay, we need to know what the ROI proposal is. All right. But even early on, when you don't have a lot of data or any data at all, you can still kind of like finger in the wind, nail a range of ROI, or at least a hypothesis of that, right? And then the third place is, go look at your market, go look at your competitors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't just look at your competitors, but go look at your potential customers and look at what they spend on other solutions. Maybe not competitive, but other solutions in their tech stack, right? And what you can start to get by triangulating these 3 data points is like, okay, what is my customer saying they value my product at? What's the perceived value? What is my internal perceived value? And maybe like my cost to deliver that. And then what is the market saying? What at large is being paid for this product or other products sold at this stage, right? And that'll hopefully give you kind of like this like center of the Venn diagram, right? Where you can say, all right, pretty quickly, back of the napkin math, like, this should be my price range. Right? Something maybe a little bit more challenging is figuring out how you should package your product. Like, I mean, that's a marketing exercise, man. That's where the real product marketer comes out. Where my CEO at Pendo, I think said it best to me, where he was like, this Todd Olson, he said, "Oh, finding a price point is easy. It's like it's the rest of it that's hard." And that, I truly subscribe to that. And then I would say start at the beginning and ask your customers, right? And go to them for your first bit of feedback.
Yeah, I think as you're walking me through those 3 sort of approaches or 3 things that you should do, what I'm also thinking, and maybe this is to your old CEO's point, there's an opportunity actually right now for companies to find a way to differentiate through pricing as well, right? Because when you talk to the customers, when you do the math, and then you also look at the competition, you could find yourself in a point where it's like there's misalignment between what the customer actually wants and where the market's going, might meet the customer where they want to be, and the old legacy players are not there, right? And that was just like what they had to deal with, but now there's a new opening, I think, which is really interesting.
Yeah, you're nailing it on the head. Like transparently, a big part of what we successfully raised money on was the idea that there was going to be 2.5x the amount of software companies in the world from today, from today's total in 2030. And
Yeah.
what that means
Wow.
is just more competition,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And product parity. And where, obviously as founders and as product marketers, and what we're constantly looking for is how do we establish differentiation. And in the past, like, your business model was was still an opportunity to do that, but was not one that most people utilized. But there are
Yeah.
great stories about companies who did. Snowflake, Costco, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, Amazon. So like, now I think it's going to be a more prominent way to differentiate, and so I'm actually really excited about it, because it's a kind of like a brave new world for building differentiation.
Totally agree. You listened in on one of our office hours recently, and you
Yeah.
shared a really awesome report or resource that you guys have put together on pricing. What are maybe tell us a little bit about that one, but also you mentioned earlier some people that you follow. Where do you go
Yeah.
to find information as well, to stay up to tune on pricing?
Yeah. Well, so transparently, like, I follow a lot of our competitors
Mm,
because they create great content about this. I feel really fortunate that we're in a competitive space that people are paying a lot of attention to, and have a lot of great thinkers in the space who are, actively trying to educate the market. So, Manny Medina is someone that I follow
mhm,
and listen to. The team at Metronome puts out a lot of really great content. They just released their state of AI pricing report today, and so there's some like shameless plugs for those two teams. Kyle Poyer, who's a VC at Tremont Ventures, is constantly not just talking about, but doing research
mhm,
on the state of software and AI pricing. He also talks about a lot of other things, like go to market in general, for companies stages like seed through Series C. So he's an absolute follow. And then there are some other really great voices in the space that talk a lot about GTM, but every now and then we'll weave pricing and packaging in. Actually, I was thinking about Rob Laturst, but he's more focused on pricing and packaging. So he's another great person to listen to. And then, of course, you guys create excellent stuff that we're constantly following. But it's one of the areas where we're trying to not create more noise, but just add to the education. Like, I'm a big believer in the tide lifts all ships, and so every week we try to put out something valuable to the space from an education perspective. What we shared with you a few days ago was a collation of 20 currently active AI pricing and packaging examples, like from companies like Decagon and Notion, and some of our competitors. And we break down each one, pros and cons, other companies that are trying this, places where you can go to check it out, even like trials in which you can kind of see how these business models work in real life. And with that, we're hoping people go in and one, like, find some inspiration for their own business, right? If you're running an AI company, like, my goal is to get you off seat-based pricing. Like, it's for the betterment of your business and for all of the market. And so I want to push out as much information as we can that helps you kind of inspire yourself to find something that works for you. But then the second is, I hope people start to see that, holy cow, there are plenty of ways to do this, tons of ways to do this, right? And not just one successful way of monetizing your AI product. And hopefully that leads people back to Atlas, which is a product built on the idea that there's not just one business model that works for AI, and you've got to find the right one for you. And so with that, like, happy to also share that here and have you share that with everyone listening.
Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the notes of this episode. But this didn't disappoint. I mean, I was really excited about this topic, and I think we could keep going. There's a lot more, I think, innovation to come in the pricing space. So maybe we can do another one of these in a couple of months. But
Yeah.
for those that are interested in connecting with you, maybe learning more about Atlas, what's the best place for them to find you guys?
Yep, we're all over LinkedIn, of course. You'll recognize like my team and I. We all have astronauts after our name labels, and that's the best place to find us. Also, www.runonatlas.com. That's our website. We've got a free product that you can use and try. It's a great proof of concept of what billing infrastructure with built-in AI looks like and feels like. So feel free to run that as many times as you'd like. It will also, as part of that free product, you get a complete breakdown of how 3 of your competitors price and package their products. Even more reason to go try it out. But before we leave, you mentioned your brand new product. How are you? Yeah, and you mentioned like thinking through the pricing and packaging. Like, okay, what have you guys thought about so far? Like, where do you start?
A little embarrassing based on this conversation. We started with a per seat pricing model. We started that way, to be honest, just to get something out there.
Yeah.
It was simple. We are selling to this product to sales reps, to individual sales reps. So again, when it comes to the buyer and meeting them where they are, I think it was a sort of easy to understand, familiar model. But as we are, I would say the simplicity thing, so we're going sort of early stage companies. So the first point that I made earlier about budgets and things like that is not our issue.
Yep.
It's more the sort of simplicity and understanding the model. But also now what I'm finding is that as we're integrating more and more AI into our product, the viability of a per seat model, right? And the margin squeezing, as you mentioned, might be the part of the model that breaks down the fastest, right?
Yeah.
So we are, again, this is a product that we launched a month ago. So we're on V0.1 and we're testing the market by using this initial model to start the conversation.
By the way, like obviously I was being bombastic, right? I think like, first and foremost, when you were launching a brand new product, like hedge more towards meeting the customer where they are versus anything else, right? Like you're just trying to prove that someone will pay for the product that's solving the problem. We do though have a customer who's trying a hybrid seat-based model with usage per seat built into it. They're too early in this test for me to say, oh, well, this is actually a really great way to kind of bridge the gap. But it's the first time I'm seeing it. So, there's maybe a there, but I think like you guys have the right idea. The right approach is like early on, like meet the customer where they are, get the product in their hands and prove that they'll pay for it somehow.
Yeah. And by the way, that hybrid model that you just mentioned is something that we are exploring. We've started talking to, my co-founders and I have started exploring it. So that's exactly the direction that we're exploring. But Michael, this was awesome, as I mentioned, and really appreciate you taking the time, sharing your insights with us. And we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah. Would love to return the favor as well. Thank you so much for having me.